do I want to put myself in this position again? And the answer was no. Like, I was almost making rent just from YouTube.
There's nothing as much power as having that full face of makeup.
No, I gotta go.
Jamie, welcome in to the Conversations.
Me thanks.
How long have we known each other now?
Too long. God, I don't know, maybe like 5 years, 6
I
years.
think it's longer than that.
Oh, maybe more like 7 years, 8 years then.
So if anyone is unaware, I've obviously known Jamie for quite a while, as we just said, but we actually know each other through YouTube. We were both YouTube creators. I was a YouTube creator from just after I left the army, so 2010, 2011. When did you start making content?
2009, I started on YouTube.
Oh, you're coming in strong. You're like, I see your years, and I raise you another.
And I
two.
raise you.
Yeah, I raise you. The ante's up by a year.
And I did it for 13 years before I threw in the towel and then started Twitch. December of 2020.
With the whole YouTube thing, like, I'm just trying to get like a bearing of where you started and how you started out, because I think it's really interesting the fact that we both were YouTubers and we both transitioned to the platform. Obviously, it was the way we met, and I met some really lovely people along the way through creating content on multiple different platforms. Others, maybe not so much. I think there's a fair share of that in any kind of job or hobby that you get. But obviously the people that I do know, and the people that I liked, they stuck around. And maybe it's the case of, oh well, I haven't seen them in many years, but it'll always be that turnaround where it's like, you'll meet them, you'll have a great time, and then you won't see them for another 5 years.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot.
There's actually quite a few people on the platform who it's like, oh, they do this now. Much like yourself, like, oh, you do this? I do this. And it's weird because you don't cross paths with each other. You might have just you don't really communicate that much anymore. But what kind of content, when you first started YouTube, did you start creating? Because it's very different from what you do now.
Yeah, so the first channel I had on YouTube was actually with my two best friends at the time, Lily and Lily. And we just made like stupid videos, challenge videos, very much like what a modern day vlogger would do. So we would just carry a camera around, film our normal day-to-day life. The other two decided that they didn't really want to make content anymore, and it's something that I really enjoyed. So then I branched off and made a channel of my own, but it was mainly just like silly, like challenge videos. And yeah, that's very much how it began.
Cinnamon challenge?
Yeah, that was actually one of our first videos. So we did the cinnamon challenge. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone now because it's stupid.
It's so dangerous.
But we did do it. Very dangerous.
I don't think that people realize how dangerous it was. Did you ever see, I never did that. When the ice bucket challenge thing went around?
I did that. I actually did that. I was on holiday at the time when it went super viral. I was on holiday in Turkey and it was roasting hot. So it was actually kind of nice for me to do it. And I didn't raise much money. I did raise a little bit, but it wasn't anywhere near. I think people saw that I kind of enjoyed it. So
see, that was the thing. I don't think I got tagged for that, and I never did it. And I think it was because I got tagged so late. By that point, people had forgotten the whole reason of why the ice bucket challenge was a thing. I wasn't really into challenge videos anyway. I started on sketch comedy. I was one of those kids.
I could see that for you.
And then I've tried so many different things because you've rebranded yourself so much throughout.
So many times.
So I went from sketch comedy. I think I then went to do a travel style channel with my ex. And then I think I went and did, that whole Casey Neistat thing. So I started acting, and then like I was kind of trying to use that style of vlogs, but it's so oversaturated. And then I just I think I just kind of petered off from there. What about yourself? Like, how did your content transform over the time that you were on the platform?
So I started with challenge videos. It was very much just like a fun place just to throw content up for people to watch. And then my first rebrand was as The Lowdown. And I did it because I wanted to be a pop culture channel. And I wanted to provide people with like pop gossip and very much like go into that form of like news content, which I did not enjoy at all. So I steered clear of that very fast. I then did like what I would say are like silly videos, where I was kind of just having fun and just enjoying it. And that's probably where I had like my peak in terms of like viewership and income and stuff like that. After that, I decided to go into like activism and education. So I did a lot of videos on queer history, queer rights. I followed the news on equality and equity. So I did a lot about like Blood Pact, the blood donation laws.
Hmm.
I did a lot about like protesting versus marching. I'd probably say like the last part of YouTube that I did was I kind of just went back to what I started with, which was just like fun videos, just kind of doing what I want. Very much how like Jenna Marbles used to just like do whatever she wanted,
Mm.
and her audience stayed because it was clear that she was having fun. I kind of finished with that, but at that point, like, I already wasn't enjoying the platform, so I was doing things that I found were fun just so I had like some form of passion behind it before I eventually quit.
I find it really interesting with like the General Marbles side of things, because I think that's what everyone would love it to be like. I'm going to take the onus and like, I'm going to be able to post what I want when I want. I don't have to be, held up by anyone else. I can make a video about my hamster or like my dog wearing a sweater, and then I can have like these big videos that are really like well funded. I think that's what most people want to do, because it seems like the easiest content to make. I mean, we both know that's not true. I think if you're
Yeah.
ever a creator, you realize how much goes into creating content, how much time goes into investing into being on a platform, right? Because it's a question of passion, motivation, and then external things that are deviating you from wanting to be on the platform. What were those factors for you at that point?
For me, I was very close with a lot of content creators who did very similar things. And I had a very close friendship with a few of them, and that kind of broke down and things turned very ugly very fast. I then developed alopecia because I was under like an immense amount of stress. After that, it was kind of like tainted for me. I was pushed out of the main like queer creators in the UK. At one point, there was like basically a witch hunt sent after me. I was receiving hundreds of hate comments, things like death threats, all of that kind of stuff. And that went on for a little while. And I tried to fight through it. I tried to keep going, like positive mindset, all of that. And I knew what I was doing was making a difference. But then like the passion just kind of died. There's a link between how passionate you are for things and how much you reap the rewards of it. Like, it's very obvious when people know you're not having fun. So then people don't watch anymore. So you see your numbers drop. And then because your numbers have dropped, you're like, well, why am I doing this if I'm not having fun and my metrics are declining? So then you're even less happy doing it. And that just kind of ends up being like a downward spiral. And then I started taking breaks, which is never good in content creation. That will always harm you. And then I just kind of had to like sit down with myself and be like, do I actually really want to do this anymore? Or am I doing it because I feel obligated to carry this on through spite? Like, I basically just wanted to prove to people that I was good enough to make it. And I was just done. I was like, nah, I'm good. Peace.
There was two things there that really stood out to me. One was when you mentioned that kind of inner circle. How does that operate differently, let's say straight creators, people who aren't part of that group? Is there a distinct difference in the way it operates?
I think so, yeah, because there is the pool of creators when you're in a niche or a minority is so much smaller that if something goes wrong, everyone tends to be like a tight-knit group.
Hmm.
So if someone decides that they don't like you anymore, and they're like viewed as being high up in that circle, then everyone will kind of just follow suit, regardless to whether they've had that conversation with you or not. So people can kind of just like make up shit and then go with whatever they want. So that is very much what happened. And then if those bigger creators then talk to companies that they are working with and they say like, between us, don't work with this person, that then hurts you a lot. I was supposed to be working with Twitter and a lot with like the London YouTube space. Both of them dropped me for no reason. I ended up speaking to someone at the London YouTube space and I said like, does anyone have beef with me there? Because I've just kind of like not received any communication at all. And they were like, no, no one has, but clearly something had gone on. So I lost some sponsorships and like some networking. And then, as you well know, a lot of growth on content and like content creation happens through networking, through people who are also in the same niche as you. And I was no longer able to do that because they were all part of this tight knit group that had basically just ostracized me. So I was very much on my own, which just makes it harder in general.
I was thinking to myself when you were saying that there's a hierarchical nature to it, right? In terms of, especially when we were on YouTube, AdSense is something that kind of like takes over. You can think of it as royalties, right? So you post a video, as long as you don't get a copyright or claim on it, you're pretty much sweet, and it will just continue to, as long as it's getting views, you'll continue to get money on it. It's not kind of the bread and butter of what you get as a creator.
It's not a lot of money, no.
Where your money comes from is going to be sponsorships, it's going to be brand deals, and let me tell you, like in the creator space, that is it. There's a reason why the industry is the way it is, but losing sponsors like that is essentially kind of like losing, let's say, 5 months work, and that's on the lower end of things. To go onto that like hierarchical structure of it, then we were talking about the structure of networking most of the time is just meeting people, just making friends. The thing is, when it gets into a more industry paced atmosphere, it then becomes a lot more about who you're working with and when you're working with them, how you're working
Totally.
with them, how you conduct yourself. It's not just you as the person anymore. It's you as a brand. You live for your brand, and it becomes this homogenized kind of status within that group. Did you feel that there was that hierarchical nature, and is that kind of how you ended up being kind of ostracized and feel like you got pushed out from it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, there are two sides to every coin.
Of course.
I'm sure part of the ostracization that I felt was in my head, and I'm sure some of it was real. Nowadays, I would probably have dealt with it very differently. But back then, I'd like not long moved to London. I was very much out of my depth. I'd just been made redundant from my job, and it very much felt hierarchical. And it's one of those things where, like, if you're part of the inner circle, things go great. You get all the opportunities, you get all the sponsorships, you get all the networking opportunities. But as soon as you're out, you're done. Especially if you're one of the smaller creators in that group, which I was. Income wise, I was doing really well. Like, I was almost making rent like every month just from YouTube, which is absurd. It's London rent. AdSense was a very small portion of that. AdSense was maybe like a tenth of what my income was. The rest of it was through like external sources like Patreon, and then sponsored streams made a good chunk of that. If like the top dogs decide they don't want you anymore, you're gone.
There was actually something that something from Soul actually that he said that struck me. He said the bigger you are, the more perception is needed. Do you think that's necessarily true, or do you think that because they're bigger, they are more perceptive in the way that they handle themselves? Maybe newer kind of content creators, people who haven't been in it as long, probably more naive to the fact of what's out there and what to look out for.
Yeah, I think there is some truth to that, especially back then. Maybe not now, because I think people who start content creation have had so much experience in watching it from an external perspective as like a viewer or like an ingester of content. But definitely back then, like you said, there was no like media training or like anything like that happened. You just kind of like had to wing it and hope for the best. Because I used to get recognized quite a lot. Like I would go out shopping in London and I would get stopped. And I remember a couple times I've been on dates and someone's come up to the table, and then I've had to explain why this random person has come up and said like, love from Sweden, like I really love your content, I didn't think I'd bump into you, like that kind of thing. Yeah, it's so bizarre. Getting recognized is something that I'll never get used to, and it still happens very rarely, very very rarely, but it does still happen.
Did you enjoy
Normally for
getting
the better.
recognized?
When it doesn't happen often, yes, because it's kind of like an affirmation. Don't get me wrong, it's also an ego boost. I think it would be a lie to say that it wasn't, but it just kind of puts like people to numbers, and it makes the content creation a lot more fun because you get to have that one-on-one experience. I remember this girl came up to me on Oxford Street. She stopped me in a shop. I was actually shopping with my little brother and his girlfriend, and they used to make jokes about me being famous all the time, and I would like laugh it off and be like, that's so silly. And then this girl stopped me on Oxford Street. Actually, her mum stopped me and said, we've been following you since you got off the tube. My daughter really wants to say hi. And then we had like a nice conversation. I had to say like, I'm actually shopping with my brother. Like I really appreciate you saying hi. And you learn quite quickly how to handle those conversations and shut them down when you need to. But I never got to live it down because we'd literally just had a conversation about me being like famous, and then I got stopped for being famous.
Aspen says, that's where it goes too far. like people not having respect for personal space and crowding and crushing their favorite streamers, YouTubers, or whatever. Well, the way that I'm perceiving that comment is about personal space and boundaries. Okay, so what are your opinions on that when it comes to
I
essence
think
of personal space, an essence of kind of what is the boundary?
yeah, I think it's heavily like up to the creator or the if they're that big, the celebrity. I think personally, what I would do is I would just like get their attention as I was like walking past, and I would just like smile and like nod my head. It's more of like an acknowledgement than like an interaction.
Hmm.
The only time where I've outright just gone and said hello to someone was I was at a YouTube party. So it's already an environment where you're like with other creators and you have like a mutual understanding of what's happening. And Jenna and Julian were there. No one was saying hello. And I was like, this is YouTube royalty. Like, there is no higher than this. And no one was saying anything. And I was like, fuck this. So I finished my drink and I was like, I'm going to go and say hello. I'm going to shoot my shot. Like, this is Jenna and Julian. So I did. I went over, I said hi. I had a really lovely conversation with both of them about being in town and about Sitsi and stuff, because they were actually at Sitsi the following day. When I turned around and I'd finished the conversation, there was basically a queue behind me of people waiting to say hello. And I kind of turned back around and I was like, I'm so sorry. And she was like, don't worry, this happens all the time. And then I saw them the following day at Sitsi in the corridor outside the green room.
Yeah.
And she was like, Jamie, hi. And I was like, it's like Jenna Marbles
The fact
my
that she
name.
remembered your name.
Straight up.
I will say, right, that Jenna Marbles, the nicest person in YouTube, the most genuine
The nicest
person.
person, for sure.
Because that was when I met them as well, was that day. And genuinely, they were genuinely.
No, I gotta go.
Lovely people, lovely people. And that's the one thing I think you can take away from a lot of these things, like a lot of these interactions, is you were in it. You knew a lot of these people. You know how they operate, and you know when to kind of spot somebody who's being disingenuous.
Totally, yeah.
For the most part, you'd like to think so. Jenna and Julian were like, it was
So genuine,
I
so
was very
lovely.
shocked. I could understand why she left the platform on that behalf. You know, that if we're talking about content creation, leaving platforms, that kind of that, you know, the whole spectrum of things that we're talking about today, I think that's one of the biggest shames for the platform was Jenna Marbles leaving. I understand why she left, and I also think one of the things that probably wasn't talked about as much, because obviously there was a lot of controversy surrounding her decision to leave, is most likely that she'd been on the platform for so long, and that decision to leave
So long.
probably overdue, and it was probably just a good look. This is happening. I'm probably going to get a lot of stick for it, but I'm kind of done anyway. That's how I
Yeah.
perceived it.
I've been inundated with messages since yesterday. A lot of them were from people that I really wasn't expecting. So I had this message. I've been following you for years now. This person's actually been following like my content creation for over a decade. And they said, I really appreciate that you do things how you want to do them and stop when you no longer feel any connection or enjoyment from them. That is such a level of advanced higher order thinking. It really makes me smile. Never stop for being you. I'm really proud. And I was like, wow, that's so true. And like, I think when Jenna left YouTube, it was such a shock to everyone that people didn't really stop to think about Jenna
Yeah.
and about her view of content creation and her her standpoint in why she was deciding to step back. And a lot of the reasons that I left content creation on Twitch echo why Jenna left YouTube. People have like this parasocial relationship, so they feel like they understand the content creator much more than they actually do. So I think it's really easy to not see why they're doing it for the reasons they're actually doing it, and more
Mhm.
so just seeing it as almost like a personal offense. Like, how could you do this to me? It can become very, very like one-sided. It's odd. Parasocial relationships are bizarre anyway.
I want to talk about drag, because
Okay,
here's the thing. You know, there is a certain amount of performance, I guess, when you are on a
for sure.
platform to keep up energy, to make sure that, you know, people are interested in what you have to say, but also, you know, I like my stream is a place where I like, you know, I'd like to think that people come to switch off from everything else. It's kind of like
Mhm.
blinkers. It has that performative element to it. I know so many of my friends who are actors who moved on to live streaming. It doesn't have to be gaming or Twitch, but have moved on to like the content creation platform. You, in the middle of doing YouTube and Twitch, did drag, and you continue to do it.
I dabble. I did it for a while. I I suppose like semi-seriously, I would probably describe it that way. Um, it's something that I enjoyed. Makeup is like a nice creative expression, and I decided to like formulate a character around it. And I did enter a competition and I sang for it. Drag in the UK is very different to drag in the States. In the UK, most of us sing live,
Mhm.
and I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was then brought back to the final as a wild card, and I dabbled in drag for a while, and
Mhm.
I still do dabble in makeup. For a while, I had a stream redemption that was like drag makeup in 15 minutes, full face of makeup, eyebrows and everything.
I've been many things in my life, but my God, there's nothing as much power as having that full face of makeup.
It's armor, yeah.
It genuinely is.
It's a character. You get to play someone else. Your inhibitions go. Anxiety doesn't really creep in because you're not yourself. You're someone else. My drag name is Anya Cox. It kind of was
It's
quite
great.
representative of how I acted in drag. I was like a little bit salacious. I mostly sang. I wasn't funny. I'm not a very funny person in general. So comedy was just nothing that I tried because I
Mm.
would just fall flat and then I would get embarrassed. Singing and like storytelling was very much like what I did, in a little bit of flirting just to make people squirm a little.
Will you ever bring her back out again? Do you think you like now with everything that's happened, which we'll get into, you'll maybe move more towards that kind of tangible performance?
Um, I don't think so. When I had a drag character, it did what I needed it to do, which
Mhm.
was just to improve my confidence. And you realize very quickly that when you take the makeup off and when you take the outfit off, you're the same person. You have the same personality, you can make the same jokes, you have the same talent. So I kind of like not necessarily put it to bed, but I just kind of was like, I have other stuff that I can do. I dabbled in makeup much more just in my general life. It was much more of like gender expression for me, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think I would bring her back, but I would do more of the things that she did. Like I would do more singing. Like I fucking love singing.
I love that. I love that something like that. Again, that performance, putting on that armor has actually given you, the non-character the confidence to be able to do these other things that you go, yeah, fuck it. Now I can do these things on my own. So I think it's very important, however you find it. And it's great that it's brought out all of these other passions and kind of
Totally, yeah. And I'm super confident now. There's very little that would kind of shake me at this point in my life. It's very much like a queer experience to find yourself later because you don't get the experience that you have of finding yourself in your teens because you're
mm.
normally closeted. But I think with queer people, once you do find yourself, you do end up very confident and you do end up very self-assured because you've had to do so much hard work to get yourself to that point.
But that, yeah, I think it does kind of solidify you, and you do have to have that defense mechanism, especially growing up in the time the you did and I did, where it wasn't as understood. But I think the point that we are now, it's a lot more understood and open. There's more support, or I like to think so. But you're
Yeah,
an advocate for that.
I teach queer educational classes to kids in schools, and the questions that they ask and the open-mindedness that they have and just the emotional maturity is far, far better than when we were that age.
Mm.
I think because the invention of the internet happened so quickly, like literally within our lifetime, people were able to access information and access communities a lot quicker. So the ability to learn has become so much easier, especially with like niches and minorities, and people are also just more likely to speak up about it.
I think that's very true in terms of the freedom of information that we have can be a benefit and a detriment in itself. But I think socially, it's had a net impact on all of us to try and understand and learn, or at least people are becoming more educated about it.
For the most part, yeah. The last few years, it's been difficult. Hate crimes have risen quite a bit against queer people and also very much against trans people. Hate crimes against trans people have gone up something like 350%. It's very much driven by a conservative government, a Tory government, who are actively trying to reverse the rights of trans people and queer people. So I do think it is important to vote wisely and vote strategically for your area, based on whatever your beliefs are. I wouldn't push my beliefs on anyone, but I do think it's very important to understand that your vote is a vote for minorities as well.
Some people don't get that opportunity to say it or that platform to say it, but they may not feel it's their right. They may not feel it's their right to say it. And I feel like you've
Yeah.
gained the power, the experience, the knowledge base where you feel like you can pass that over. Like you're saying, you're doing these educational like think groups with schools. When it comes to those groups, is it a small section or is it like an entire year group?
The most I've taught in one go is 1,000 people. It was a whole year at an all girls school, and there were 1,000 students there. And they asked me to do it on like specific things. Sometimes it's pronoun usage, sometimes it's gender identity and expression, sometimes it's about like the acceptance of trans people and how to navigate questions and things like that. But it's very rewarding work, and the questions that I get are always very like good deep questions. One of the questions that will stick with me forever was, how has the LGBTQ plus community reclaimed the word queer, and how is that affecting them emotionally? A 14-year-old asked me that question. Like, even when I talk about it now, it gives me goosebumps. Like, the fact that a 14-year-old had that amount of emotional maturity as a seemingly straight kid, to have that depth to ask that question blows my mind. It was incredible.
I know some 40-year-olds who wouldn't ask a question as deep
Me
as that.
too.
Mm.
Yeah.
When it comes to building community, building a base of people that like what you do, who like listening to you, like hanging out with you, there's many facets and many different areas in which to view it. Like for me, I don't like the word fans.
No, it gives me the ick.
Yeah, it's an ick. Personally, you can shoot me down. I hate the word influencer. I'd like content create because that's what I do. If I have influence over you, it's no fault of mine. That's the way I see it. I'm just not a big fan of it because for me, that word has
Negative connotations.
negative,
Yeah.
manipulative connotations, and I never
Yeah,
want to feel that
agree.
way. That's just me. You use whatever words you want to, dudes. How did you find Twitch? What made you want to do Twitch? Because again, we spoke about starting off on YouTube, obviously having that element of drag, which gave you a lot of confidence, but moving into Twitch, you said December 2020.
Yeah, November 25th, 2020 was when I started. I hit affiliate a week after, which is the shortest amount of time you can do affiliate in. So I was very proud of myself. But I found the platform through, it was two people actually. There's like a group on Twitch called the Chromaco Boys, and it's like a group of people that have formed like their own little unofficial stream team. I found it through them because a lot of them are my friends. And also Bianca's Life, it's Binky B. Yes, Smithy was one of the people who I found Twitch through. And I think it gave me hope for building a community because it meant that I could draw a line on YouTube and move away from that and then start afresh and really curate my space with all the lessons that I'd learned from previously doing it on a different platform. I saw it. I really enjoyed it. I loved the interaction that people had. The live element to it was really lovely. And then I just said, fuck it, and built myself a PC.
Do you feel like titles like that feel like you have to place yourself on a pedestal? Does it add a lot of unnecessary pressure? So titles like influencer, content creator, Twitch streamer.
Yes. So I think the thing that people have to understand is when you start to assimilate a community, you're already on that pedestal, regardless to whether the word is attached or not. You're already there. You're responsible for a lot of the decisions that happen. You're responsible for people's safety, people's safeguarding. People look up to you for whatever reason, regardless to how big your community is. You could have 2 viewers, a community of 5 people. Those 5 people are like under your protection, that it's your safe space to curate. I do feel like it can add a lot of unnecessary pressure when you label yourself as that, but I think the pressure is already there. It's just the acknowledgement of seeing the pressure. When you give yourself a title like influencer or community manager or like the head of a community, all you're really doing is just acknowledging and recognizing that you have a social obligation to curate that safe space and make sure that while people are there, they feel safe.
I think that's a very good answer. I think that's a very well-rounded answer. And
I
actually,
fucking nailed
you
that.
fucking had it, dude. I was like, holy shit! I'm like, I feel like I was on the outside looking in. Then I wasn't even a part of this whole thing. I was like, you know
Me
what?
too.
Wait, is there a way to make you just full screen and then just have me on the background? We'll make it friend forsations. There we go. That actually is really there. That's a really good answer. And I actually have a friend who used to stream, and one of the things that I started streaming in December 2020, same as you. Just a little bit
Yeah.
later, like a week later, whatever. And I hit affiliate pretty fast. Like I had a lot of people who wanted to support me. I think that's always going to be your biggest growth if you're going for it. Your fastest growth is always going to be like that first 50 is that first affiliate. If
Totally.
you're running it, you're scheduled, you've built your stream, quite nicely, and you already have friends that stream, that's probably going to be the quickest time for your growth. Being ahead of a community, and you spoke about this yesterday, which I very much understand. At different times, it affects you differently as to how you deal with this. A friend of mine, like I said, he started streaming Probably about a month after I did, I think he saw that I was doing it. He's like, I want a bit of that cake in terms of the aspect of, hey, that looks like fun. So he got the PC, started streaming, and he went completely faceless. He didn't want to be seen on camera, which is fair enough. I think it's one of those
Totally
things of
fair, yeah.
anonymity, but also doesn't want to be held by anyone, which is a fair point, right?
Safeguarding, yeah.
Yeah. And so I completely understand that. And, I think a better place for that, if you don't necessarily want to run a community for the most part, is something like YouTube, longer form content, right? Even if you stream on YouTube, there's much more of a detachment of community. I like streaming on Twitch because there are different communities about different subsets that you can draw from, and you're making your own community. That's the reason why I love Twitch. I say if you want to just stream, you want to put yourself out there, be more discoverable, hang on the algorithm, YouTube is the place. And I think that's the key difference. But yeah, when you were talking about being ahead of a community, what kind of responsibilities do you feel like you have to uphold?
The main one is that people look to you as like a place of safety. So you kind of have to uphold that. But safety can mean different things for different people. So sometimes it can be a place to make light of a situation and to joke, to help people through. Sometimes it's people need to be heard or feel like they're being heard, and you can like discuss things and problem solve. People deal with trauma very differently. That it's very individual. Some people aren't going to deal with it in one way, whereas someone else may. You have a responsibility to make sure that the people who are in your community feel safe. But you also have a responsibility to make sure you're doing the right thing, or it's
Mhm.
perceived as the right thing, all the time, which is just not how it works. Hannah Montana very famously said, "Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days," and she's very right.
It's a
No
quote for the
one's
history
like no one's
books.
perfect. Truly, truly, it's going in my yearbook. If you have something like a Discord, your responsibilities and your obligations then become 24/7, because while you're on stream you can manage your chat, and if you have good mods, they will also help you do that. But when it comes to something like Discord, that's 24/7. You then don't get the opportunity to turn off. Because if someone puts something in your Discord that you don't want to be there, you have to be around to be able to navigate that. You also don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So there's like very specific ways that you're able to deal with that. So it then becomes like a 24/7 job. I think what people don't understand with content creation is it's multifaceted. No one
Mm.
ever just has content creation on one platform. You're then the head of a community for so many different avenues, and each require something different, and that can be really really difficult to uphold, especially when you're doing something like Twitch or even YouTube. At some points I was putting more hours in than a full-time job alongside my full-time job, so your self-care then suffers and it becomes quite mentally taxing. But you still have an obligation, like a safeguarding obligation, for all the people that are in your community. At what point do you suffer to uphold everyone else's guard, you know?
Absolutely. It's a difficult one because a lot of people will say, well, it's your fucking choice. You don't have to do this.
Very much that.
Right. So the thing is, there's no pleasing people, or there's no you don't get garner sympathy. Not that you want sympathy, but it's something you enjoy doing, and it's something you want to build, and it's something you want to grow. But there's sometimes a point in some cases where people resent you growing. There is that element of, as you grow, that kind of personable nature gets lost.
You'll also just get salty, other creators that just get salty that you're doing well and they're not doing as well. If they're not progressing at the same rate as you, you'll be really surprised how quickly a friendship can become transactional. Or you'll even have like members of the community that assume something and want to gain something from your friendship or your relationship, and when they don't get that, they're very quick to turn on you, which can lead to quite a toxic environment. Yeah, I was very lucky to have been blessed with the community that I had, and like nurture a community into something bigger than it was, for sure.
Moving along into your decision until Monday. You said you made the decision Monday. Can you lead us through the journey that you took to kind of get there?
It is something that I kind of like kept an eye on. As a person who has done content creation for so many years, you do tend to see the signs of like toxicity starting, or people not really having the same alignment in community as you. I think at that point you have to make a decision whether you cut it out and try and move on, or you make the decision to step back. When I started Twitch, I promised myself that I would never let myself get into a position like I did with YouTube, where I was doing it out of obligation and I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And I made sure that if I were to leave Twitch, it would be at a point where I still had affinity for the platform. I didn't want to leave and be like, I hate Twitch, I'm never going back. I wanted it to be, I'm stepping away from Twitch for myself. However, I still have a love for the platform. I left my house early in the morning to go to work. And a week prior to this incident, we had a forced entry into the flat when I was at home. Um, and it was scary. I had to push someone out of my home, somewhere that was supposed to be a safe space for me. Um, and then I left my house to go to work, and I had my headphones in, and I was immediately confronted by police. It was quite scary. I was getting shouted at because I had unknowingly walked into an active crime scene. There was a lot of blood everywhere, and I had stepped in blood. Um, the end of that situation, there was a lot that happened in the interim. The end of that situation is someone lost their life. There was a murder that happened outside my house. There were police on the road for like 2.5 days. It was extremely traumatic for me to go through, um, because someone had lost their life, and it had happened literally right outside my house. Um, so in that situation, my way of dealing with it was to make light of it, to crack a joke, to protect my bubble. And after my stream, where I did crack a joke and I engaged in like friendly banter with my community members about what had happened, I basically received a message that said the way that I was dealing with trauma was wrong and that it wasn't my place to say those kinds of things. um, I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea for me to have that conversation, but at the end of the day, it's my trauma. I went on a very long rant when I spoke about this yesterday in my stream, but it is no one's place to negate how I deal with trauma and how I navigate that in my own social sphere. If people don't like it, they don't have to listen. They don't have to be there. But to tell me what I'm doing is wrong with regards to processing something that was very intense for me, just didn't sit right with me. The message that I received was laced with hypocrisy. And at that point, I stood back and decided that that is something that I no longer wanted to be a part of. Um, so I made my decision based partly on that, um, but also there were other things that came with my decision. At the end of the day, as someone who understood that they were ahead of the community, I didn't want to be seen as someone who was doing wrong, based on my actions. At the end of the day, I am not responsible for someone else's behaviors. I'm just living my life. If people don't like it, they can leave. Yeah, after that conversation, I took a moment and I was like, do I want to put myself in this position again? And the answer was no. So I made the decision then that my last stream would be Thursday. As soon as I'd made that decision, I felt an immediate sense of relief to know that there was going to be an end. And I didn't want to just leave the platform at the drop of a hat because I felt that would have been a disservice to my community. I wanted to make sure that I had an avenue of open communication where I could really discuss what happened and my reasonings for leaving the platform, and then have like a final hurrah to enjoy and celebrate what I had done over the last 18 months. And I really do feel like I achieved that. My last stream was wonderful.
That's a good way to end your kind of, let's say, streaming a content career, because like, you might decide that later on you want to make some content, but I feel like it's quite firmly the ball is in the court of not now, not anymore, not ever, on as far as Twitch is concerned for you streaming.
Yeah, and I wanted to really make a point of saying, like, this is my decision. This isn't a decision that can be influenced or changed by the impact of someone else. It's important to remember that one person's trauma does not negate someone else's. The way that I deal with trauma does not belittle or acknowledge someone else's trauma. I dealt with it that way because that is how I needed to deal with it. It was either that or have a breakdown, which I ended up doing anyway, but for a different reason.
On a more positive note and looking forward, what is on the horizon for you?
Like 6 weeks ago, I bought all the stuff to crochet a blanket. I really enjoy crocheting. I find it very therapeutic. I'm also someone that works a lot of overtime at my job. I'm looking to buy property next year. So I would like to crochet this blanket. I also started a company in February called Queer Threads, where I make Pride Positive stickers, soon to be Pride Positive pins. And it's something that has honestly really taken off. I'd really love to get back to like some queer activism, Instagram, TikTok, whatever avenue that goes down. But for now, I would like a long bath
Mm.
and a cup of tea.
Serious question then. How do you take your tea?
Really dark. Yeah. So breakfast tea, I call it builder's tea.
Oh, you
The
do
tea bag is
builder's brew.
in for ages. Yeah. Splash of milk. There's barely anything in there. Two sugars.
I do like one and a half to make myself feel better, and then I have black tea now.
For a
I
long
drink I,
time, I just had black
I
tea.
drink black tea and black coffee. You know the reason why I do that? It's because I drank like six latte, no, not even lattes, mochas, Costa mochas, and the large ones. I'd drink six of those a day when I was doing like the driving around job. I got hella fat, and it was all the milk, it was all the dairy.
Yeah, the dairy and the sugar,
Mm.
you really don't realize, and then you get sucker punched and you're like, "Oh shit, where did this come from?" Dairy and sugar.
Is
That's where it comes
killer.
from.
What advice would you give to existing streamers who've been on the platform for a while who are continuing with their streaming journey, or content creators in their content creation journey, and then people who are thinking, hey, I might give live streaming a go, should I do it? What are the pitfalls, or what are the pros and cons of it? What would your advice be?
Absolutely. If you're thinking of doing streaming or any form of content creation, do it. Like, fuck it. What have you got to lose? Really go for it. Give it your all and do something that you're passionate about. A community will find you. There really is an audience for everything. So, really just go for it and just have fun. Otherwise, you'll constantly be questioning what if. The pros and cons to that, the cons are that you have to understand you have a social responsibility and an obligation to manage other people's behaviors, and also to safeguard the people that do end up as part of your community. The pros is you'll make incredible friends all over the world, who you will have forever. My advice to anyone that is currently a content creator or who is thinking about content creation is what you have to understand is your mental health and your safeguarding is the forefront. If you can't bring yourself 100% to every stream or every time you create content, it is very obvious to your community and it's very obvious to yourself that you're not going to be enjoying that. If you need to take time away and it is going to harm your future or your growth in that sphere, then so be it. Um, you can't push yourself to the limit. You will burn out very fast. It takes 3 years to recover from burnout. I don't have that time. Just don't let yourself get to that point. Check in with yourself. Have a close group of friends around you who can recognize when you are getting to that point and can help pull you out of it. Because you can get super passionate and involved, and you will push yourself because it's what you want. Objectively view it and know that when you have to step away, you have to step away. And also, yeah, pay your taxes.
Pay
Like
your
that shit's no
taxes.
joke. They will get your ass.